Pluto, hey? You might remember when Pluto got downgraded by the international astronomy community from being a planet. It's now a Plutoid, I think. Maybe you think of the Walt Disney cartoon dog who goes by the name Pluto when you hear the name. Or maybe you heard about the recent Pluto return of the United States of America. But the big question is, what's Pluto all about in the context of an astrological chart? Well, it's a very good question. Now here's my answer. So let's kick this off with the short answer. Really important to note that Pluto is so far away from the Sun, its orbit is so long and so slow that Pluto placements by sign are much more of a generational thing than they are an individual one. But that being said, basically your Pluto placement can hard to say that 10 times, can show you your capacity to be reborn. Things that you keep hidden, so like your secrets as well as your unconscious, which is things you keep hidden from yourself even, also can show your shadow, right? So that's the short answer. Let's get into the long one. So let's begin this long answer by looking at the mythology around the character Pluto. So Pluto is very closely linked to the character Hades, who you might be more familiar with, who is of course the god of the underworld, as is Pluto. So it's important to note that this underworld we're talking about is not quite the same as the Judeo-Christian idea of hell. It wasn't like a place where everyone went to go punished. It was the whole river Styx. It was just where the soul went once the body had perished. Of course, death is considered a taboo topic. It's not basically seen as polite to bring up death all the time and to talk about death. And of course, that's kind of interesting because that links in kind of over itself into the fact that it's a taboo topic. So it's something that we keep hidden. We hide dead bodies. We keep them out of sight. Of course. Because it's unhealthy to have dead bodies lying around, but also we give them specific places where, so basically we don't have to think about them, so we can go and visit them when we're ready, that kind of thing. So considering this whole concept of an underworld, it really shows that Pluto as a planet represents the journey of not of life but of death and then of rebirth. So this can be on all scales, whether we're talking about actual reincarnation, the process that the soul goes through to get ready to go into another body, if that's the way that you view things. But it can also be on a smaller scale. For example, the circle of life. That's not such a smaller scale, but you know what I'm saying. This dies so that can live, that kind of thing. Even on a personal level, like losing a job is a total travesty. You can see that as like the death of like one part of your life, one time of your life, one kind of routine and so on. But losing that then leads you to find a new one and begin a new thing. These are Plutonic processes that we're talking about. And your Pluto placement and your chart can show ways in which that process is occurring for you and for your generation, as I mentioned earlier, and what kind of regeneration you are called to be involved in or even to personally undergo. So with Pluto being more of a generational planet, and you can often map how generations have dealt with taboo topics by looking at their Pluto placements. So for example, Pluto was transiting through Virgo between 1956 and 1972. And in the West, we got the rise of the middle class, really. We got social programs for the elderly and the poor really started to come through. It was a fundamental change in the way that we look at service in the context of society. And that's a really clear example of a Plutonic process going through Virgoan themes, right? Addressing the things that were just assumptions, things that have been lying there forever. Pluto getting in there to dig them up, and things relating to service and these kind of other Virgoan themes. 1971 to 1984, Pluto was transiting through Libra, and this was a time in the West also there were a lot of political scandals there to do with like justice and the wielding of justice, this kind of things. Of course, Libra represented by the scales. Divorce started to become a lot more common, and in fact you got a whole generation of children who were born basically expecting divorce. They did not trust love to last forever, or relationships to last forever, which of course is the shadow side of relationship, which of course it would happen as Pluto was going through the sign of Libra. 1983 to 1995, Pluto was going through Scorpio. So at this time we saw the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, which basically brought the end of the 1970s era of free love. It was basically brought to a really horrifying end, and it was brought with us having to stare right in the face with basically the shadow of sex, and this kind of shadow that maybe people hadn't considered and maybe didn't even really exist before. Death was now linked with sex in a terrifyingly direct way, and something that people had never even considered before. People born with their Pluto and Scorpio during these dates, it pretty much perfectly tracks with the millennial generation, of which I am a part. And something that you've seen among millennials is not being afraid to have to bring difficult, long overdue discussions into the limelight. From discussions around sexuality, gender, equality to mental health. Like, I remember growing up and these things were completely taboo, but like now they're wide open. People are finally starting to talk about mental health as an example. Even in the last 10 years, it's been a thing that people are kind of don't talk about, and now it's everywhere, which I think is brilliant. And that's a really good example of a really healthy Plutonic process in getting out, getting the shadow up into the open, and so that we can have this process of death and rebirth happen on these things which basically no longer serve us. One final thing I want to mention with Pluto is about how it relates to power dynamics. So there's this word that's plutocracy, which of course is Pluto in the title, if you didn't know. And a plutocracy is a society that is ruled by money and wealth. It's essentially ruled by the wealthy, and that's a very insidious kind of power that kind of flies under the radar, which once again relates to the shadow of a society. For example, in our society, it's really interesting now that we've got this. We basically do in the West, certainly we do have, to a large extent, we live in a plutocracy, and it's this kind of open secret. Like, everyone knows, but no one really wants to do anything about it. You know what I mean? And it's certainly more open now than ever, especially since we're just coming to the end of a Pluto transit through Capricorn, which is to do with institutions, which of course includes financial institutions, and this examination of how power and finance and political power, financial power, and how they intertwine and so on. It's just a Plutonic process showing us all these things, but we've still got to go through that rebirth process to basically improve what we're being shown. Alright, those are my thoughts on Pluto for today. So thank you very much for checking out the video. Hope you found it interesting. If you want more of these videos to find interesting, you can let me know by hitting the like button and the subscribe button below. And if you want to go even further, you can help me very much by leaving a comment to let the algorithm know that I'm here. And well, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers.